Good evening people, my name is Lalit Soni and you are watching Indepth by Drishti IAS. In this video, we will be talking about a Supreme Court judgment wherein they have acknowledged the right of people with disabilities. Supreme Court has said that the accessibility for disabled person or the people with disability is a human and a fundamental right. Now we will be talking about this decision. We will also be talking about the problems or the challenges which are faced by the person with disabilities in this society. Okay, so let's start our discussion. Accessibility for disabled person is a human and a fundamental right, says Supreme Court. This is the crux of the judgment. We will be talking about that in detail. Okay, so now let's start. Here we will be talking about the news first. Okay, and after that the point of discussions are basically what is the problem, what are the challenges which are being faced by the person with disabilities, then what did the Supreme Court say. We will be talking about the judgment over here. There are various observations which has been mentioned by the Supreme Court. We will be talking about that as well. Then initiatives in this regard, okay, at the global level as well as our national level, or as you can say initiatives by India. We will be talking about that. Okay, in the end there will be a practice question for you talking about the relevance to the syllabus. So you can see policy making or any kind of you can say change in the you can say enactments or the laws that is related to your polity, that is there in GS2. Supreme Court's judgment are also covered in the polity. Okay, so we can say this is related to GS paper 2. Other than that, this issue is of society. Okay, so we can say that it is also belonging to GS paper 1 society section. Okay, now before moving further, we have GS foundation courses for prelims as well as mains in the offline mode and English medium. That classes will be starting from 13th of November at our Indore center and 26th of November at Delhi center. So you can directly visit the center to get yourself enrolled, or you can call on this number, that is 8010440440 for any kind of inquiry. Okay, with that we will be moving forward, and don't forget to subscribe the channel. Okay, now let's see. The news is the Supreme Court has said that accessibility for disabled person is a human and a fundamental right. Okay, now how it is a fundamental right? Because it is not written in the part 3 of the Constitution. When we talk about part 3 or when we talk about fundamental rights, they are mentioned in the part 3 of the Indian Constitution. Now that we did not read it as of yet, we did not read that some kind of right exists over there. So Supreme Court is basically the final interpreter of the Constitution. With having that kind of power, they interpret the Constitution, or you can say they have the final say on the provisions of the Constitution, and they have interpreted the part 3 in a way that they have said that accessibility for disabled person is a human and fundamental right. That is why we are saying that with this particular judgment we can say that it is also a fundamental right. There are various other rights which has found their existence like that. So you can say one is your right to privacy. Okay, there was this judgment, 𝐏𝐾 𝐏𝐻𝐒 judgment, and with that we have got this right to privacy under part 3. Other than that, also there is this right to marry the partner of your choice. Now this is not exclusively written in the part 3, but that is also part of your article 21, that is right to life and the personal liberty. Okay, anyways, moving further, Supreme Court has also mentioned that there are certain directives which has been given to implement the public in the public as well as the private spaces, that you should go for the universal design. Universal design means that there should be a design which is followed everywhere in the public as well as private sectors. Okay, now this principle, if we look at, that says that the spaces should be usable by all irrespective of any kind of ability, age or status. Okay, every person who is there in that particular premises, he should be able to use the amenities over there or the facilities over there, okay, without any kind of difficulty. So for that you need to have a universal design that is inclusive and accessible. Now this design principle promotes inclusivity, enabling disabled person to participate equally in the society. Okay, so that has been discussed in this particular judgment. Now coming to the problems which are basically faced by people with disabilities in day-to-day life. Here you can see first is your infrastructure deficiencies. Okay, if there is a institution where there are certain stairs which are given for for a person to go from ground floor to first floor. Okay, Now there is no ramp or there is no lift. In that case, you can say that there is a infrastructure deficiency, because of which a person with disability cannot move from ground floor to the first floor. Okay, so now that is because of the lack of infrastructure. Okay, second thing is your accessibility barriers. Now let's say there is the similar example. If we talk about, there is no ramp, and if there is a person who is using a wheelchair, how will he access or get access to any kind of office or the premises? Okay, so that is accessibility barriers which are there. Educational exclusions, we will be talking about that in detail. Workplace discrimination and the employment gap, these are all things which are related to each other. Okay, now let's see over here in detail. We'll be seeing, first is the major challenges which are faced by the person with disabilities. First is your lack of basic infrastructure, which we have seen, inadequate facilities in public spaces and the transportation. Okay, here you can see Department of Empowerment of Person with Disability reports 2018, which is saying that only 3% of the buildings are fully accessible. That means that only 3% of the buildings which are there, which are friendly for the people with disability, or you can say that they can access all part of the buildings. Okay, moving further, educational exclusion, so lack of inclusive schools and the trained teachers, that is actually contributing to the problem. Let's say lack of the inclusive schools. The same thing is, if the premises is not accessible, how you think a person with disability might be able to study there? Okay, other than that, trained teachers or lack of trained teachers, that means that if a teacher is not you can say sensitive enough about all these things, so that is also a cause of concern. Now looking at the literacy rate, 45% of the disabled person aged from 3 to 33 years are illiterate, or 63 nearly 63% or 62.9%, or you can say nearly 63% have attended the school. Okay, now this is the number which we are talking about, that 45% of the disabled people are basically illiterate. Okay, so that is, you can say, there is a gap in the education. Then coming to the workplace discrimination and the social prejudice, employment of approximately 30 million disabled person in India. Now that is basically, you can say, there are 30 million people who are basically employable. Okay, now sorry, there are 30 million disabled people, and out of which 13 million are employable. They can go for any kind of work, they are having the degrees or the eligibilities for the job. Okay, so 13 million people are employable. Okay, but the thing is, if you talk about the exact number, you can say that that is 3.4 million only. This is the number of people who are actually employed. So we can say that there are 30 million people who are basically facing some kind of issues, but the thing is, there are only 3.4 million you can say people with the disabilities which are working. Okay, so that is the gap which is there. So we can say that there is a workplace discrimination which is there. Okay, now moving further, healthcare related barriers, if you look at it, lack of disability friendly equipment. As I told you, the medical devices, or you can say infrastructure related problems are there. That is one of result of that, or the consequence of that particular problem, that we have lack of disability friendly equipments and trained staff. Deeply rooted social stigma and the misconceptions, the discrimination, exclusion from the social activities, and exposure to the violence affecting the mental health and the quality of life. Obviously, if you feel there is some kind of discrimination which is happening against you, or if there is some kind of gap or some kind of social stigma which has been attached with your presence, so these things create a sphere wherein you can say that person might be feeling letting down, or you can say they might have some kind of mental health related issues maybe. Okay, now digital device, if we talk about the lack of accessibility feature in digital services such as the screen readers and the closed captions, so obviously there also we are facing that there is a digital divide which is there. Now according to 2020 web accessibility report, 98% of the websites failed to meet the accessibility requirement, which increases inequality in the educational as well as employment opportunities. Okay, now moving further, now when we talk about this particular digital divide, you can say that right now countries are going for the digital mode of education as well as work. Okay, now if there is a person who is not able to, or he is not screen friendly, in that case that can act as a disadvantage for that particular person. Okay, so that digital device is also there. Now difference between legal and the policy implementation. Despite progressive laws, their effective implementation remains a significant challenge. Here you can say, as per the 2019 report, only 23 states has formed the State Advisory Board, which are mandatory under the Rights of Person with the Disabilities Act 2016. Okay. Now there is this particular act which provides for state advisory boards. Only 23 states has it. So that means that there is some kind of gap in the implementation of the law as well. Okay. Now coming to the next part, that is Supreme Court's decision. Now we have seen that what are the challenges. Now we will be talking about the decision here. Human and the fundamental rights. Right of a person with disabilities to access services and the opportunities. This right is not effectively implemented at the ground level. Okay, Supreme Court has recognized the right, but they have also observed that that is not being implemented. Okay, moving further, Chief Justice view, disability becomes a tragedy when society fails to provide for the necessary facilities. Basically here it is said that disability is the consequence when society is ignoring the needs of that particular person, or you can say if society is not able to provide for the special you can say facilities, okay, or the facilities which are basic and they are needed. Okay, if society is not able to provide it, if the state is not able to provide it, in that case you will face this you can say consequence as disability. Now example, if metro and buses services in the city are not accessible to a person with disabilities, that reflects the failure of the society. Here with this example, it is clear that if the services, if the infrastructure is not being provided by the state or the society, that is the problem of society and not these person. Okay, so if there is a person with disability, he is not able to get the access to a bus service or to a campus, and that means that that is a failure of state, and that is not a problem of that person, that is the problem of state and the society. Okay, low floor wheelchair accessible CNG buses. As I told you that if you talk about these buses, more than nearly 5 to 6,000 buses are there in the metro cities. If you talk about Delhi, there is nearly 3775 buses, and in Tamil Nadu there are only 1900 some buses are there. Okay, basic means that we do not have that kind of infrastructure which is accessible and inclusive. Okay, in Mumbai, at Andheri metro station complies with the accessibility standards, whereas the Mumbai art gallery lacks the basic facilities. Okay, so that kind of gap is there. Now other than that, what Supreme Court has observed is that emotional and the relational challenges. Now in a relation, person with disabilities, most of the time their emotional as well as privacy related needs are being, you can say, ignored by the people and the society. Okay, now that has a negative impact on their life as well. Here you can say society overlooks the right of persons with disability to privacy and love in their personal relations. If they are not given the private spaces, their emotional rights are impacted. There is a report by the Nalsar University that says that the decision was based that says that the necessary step for the accessibility you can say standard should be taken. Okay, so basically here Nalsar report is saying that there are gaps which has to be fulfilled. Okay, decision was based on the report by the Nalsar University which suggested the necessary step for the accessibility standard should be taken. Now Supreme Court has based its decision on this particular report. Okay, mandatory disability regulation, if we talk about, the court observed that the provision of the rights of person with disabilities are not mandatory. Looking at the whatever legal provisions we have, that said that the provisions of the rights of person with disability acts are not mandatory. So Supreme Court has said, directed the government to go for making these provisions mandatory, and they have directed to implement mandatory regulations within 3 months. Okay, so that has been discussed by the Supreme Court. Other than that, also court has understood the significance of the accessibility here. Essential requirement, when we talk about accessibility, this is an essential requirement, that is a basic thing which a person should have. Accessibility enables individual, especially disabled person, to exercise their right. Then example, if we talk about lack of wheelchair ramps impact the independence of and the dignity in the workplace. Okay, social model of disability, the court highlighted that disability arises due to the external barriers and not the personal limitation. If there is a person who is not able to get inside a particular campus because he is using a wheelchair, that is not his problem. That is the problem of that campus who is not able to provide the necessary infrastructure or the accessible campus. Okay. Example, inaccessible public spaces due to the lack of braille signs or the audio guides. Okay, that is for the blind people when we talk about. So basically, if a campus is not able to provide these kind of services, that is a problem of that particular campus. Okay, that has been discussed by the Supreme Court over here. Now, if we talk about the key initiatives, so at national level and the international level, we have certain initiatives which are there. Okay, so name of these initiatives, like we have national fellowships for the people with disabilities, we have PM Daksh. Okay, that is for the people with disability, we have this scheme by the central government. Then we have Sugamya Bharat Abhiyan. Sugamya Bharat, that means that accessibility for all should be there, so that is Sugamya Bharat. Okay, Deen Dayal Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme. Okay, so that is some initiative which are there at our national level. If we talk about the global initiatives, we have International Day for Awareness and the Support for Disabled Individuals. Then we have Asia Pacific Strategy, regional strategy for the disability rights, and then we have UN Convention on the International Framework for Disability Rights. Okay, so these are certain things, or the you can say initiatives which has been taken on the national as well as the international level. With that, we will stop our discussions over here. Now we will be moving to the last part, that is your practice question. Okay, so let's see. When was the International Day of Person with Disabilities started? 1990, 92, 2005 and 1993. So you can attempt this question and answer to me in the comment box. With that, I would like to take your leave. If you have not subscribed the channel, please subscribe it. Have a nice day. Thank you.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.